The fluorescent lights of Riverside Elementary School hummed overhead as Marcus Thompson sat in the cramped waiting area outside Principal Henderson's office. His weathered work boots, still dusty from the construction site, seemed out of place against the polished linoleum floor. He checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes, 2:47 p.m. His shift started again at 4 sir, and he still had to pick up his daughter Emma from the after-school program. The school secretary, Mrs. Patterson, glanced at him over her reading glasses with a look that Marcus had grown accustomed to over the past year, a mixture of pity and judgment that made his jaw tighten. He knew what people saw: a 32-year-old black man in a faded work jacket, calloused hands gripping a baseball cap, clearly struggling to make ends meet. What they didn't see were the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the homework sessions at midnight, or the fierce love that drove every exhausting decision. "Mr. Thompson?" A voice cut through his thoughts. Principal Henderson stood in the doorway, his suit pressed and immaculate, his expression carefully neutral. "Please, come in." Marcus followed him into the office, immediately noticing the other person in the room. A thin white woman in her 50s with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. Director Margaret Sinclair of the Riverside School District's gifted program sat with her leather portfolio closed on her lap, every inch of her posture radiating authority and barely concealed disapproval. "Mr. Thompson, this is Director Sinclair," Henderson began, settling behind his desk. "She's here to discuss Emma's situation." "Situation?" Marcus leaned forward, his heart rate quickening. "Is Emma okay? Did something happen?" "Emma is physically fine," Director Sinclair interjected, her tone clipped and professional. "However, we need to address some concerns about her placement in our gifted program." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Emma had been so excited when she'd been accepted into the program 3 months ago. It was one of the few bright spots since her mother, Sarah, had died in a car accident 14 months earlier. The program gave Emma something to look forward to, a place where her quick mind and curiosity were celebrated rather than making her feel different from other kids. "What kind of concerns?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Director Sinclair opened her portfolio with deliberate slowness, pulling out several documents. "Mr. Thompson, the gifted program at Riverside requires a significant level of parental involvement. We need parents who can attend quarterly meetings, participate in educational enrichment activities, and provide a home environment conducive to advanced learning." "I've been to every meeting I possibly could," Marcus protested. "I might be a few minutes late sometimes because of work, but I'm there." "You missed the last 2 meetings entirely," she countered, her eyebrow arched. "And when you do attend, you arrive in work clothes, often appearing rushed and distracted. Furthermore, Emma has mentioned that you work 2 jobs, which raises questions about supervision and the quality of her home learning environment." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He wanted to explain, to tell them about the medical bills from Sarah's accident that insurance hadn't covered, the rent increase that had forced him to take the second job, the way he quizzed Emma on her vocabulary words while they ate dinner together, the library trips every Saturday morning without fail. But the way Director Sinclair looked at him, with that mixture of condescension and finality, made him feel like his explanations would fall on deaf ears. "Director Sinclair believes," Principal Henderson said, his tone slightly softer, "that Emma might be better served in the regular academic track, less pressure, more flexibility." "You mean you're kicking her out?" Marcus said flatly. "We're reconsidering her placement," Director Sinclair corrected. "Mr. Thompson, I've been running gifted programs for 20 years. These programs require a certain type of family structure and support system. Emma is a bright girl, but frankly, and I mean no offense, she doesn't belong here. Not under these circumstances." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce, but he forced it down. Losing his temper wouldn't help Emma. Nothing he said right now would change this woman's mind. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the way she'd already mentally moved on to her next appointment. "When?" he managed to ask. "We'll transition her at the end of this semester, giving her time to adjust," Henderson said. "It's really for the best, Mr. Thompson." Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need to pick up my daughter." As he walked toward the door, Director Sinclair's voice followed him. "Mr. Thompson? It's nothing personal. We simply have standards to maintain." Marcus didn't trust himself to respond. He left the office, barely hearing Mrs. Patterson's goodbye, his mind racing with how he would explain this to Emma. She'd been so proud of being in the gifted program, had finally started smiling again after months of grief. This would crush her. The late afternoon sun hit him as he pushed through the school's front doors. The autumn air in suburban Portland carried the scent of fallen leaves and impending rain. Marcus stood on the steps for a moment, trying to compose himself before facing his daughter. His phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor asking if he could work overtime tonight. He ignored it. At the after-school program, Emma spotted him immediately. At 8 years old, she had her mother's bright eyes and quick smile, though both had been dimmed by loss. Today, though, she was animated, talking rapidly about a science project as they walked to his truck. "And Mrs. Chen said my hypothesis was really sophisticated, Dad. She said I think like a real scientist." Emma buckled her seatbelt, still chattering. "Oh, and tomorrow the gifted program is taking a field trip to OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. Can I go? Please." Marcus gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Emma, honey, we need to talk about something." Her smile faded immediately. She'd become attuned to bad news over the past year, reading the signs in his voice and posture. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, baby. It's just—" He turned to look at her, seeing fear already creeping into her expression. "The school thinks maybe you'd be happier in the regular classes. More time for other activities, less pressure. They're kicking me out." It wasn't a question. Emma's voice went flat, and Marcus saw her retreat into herself, the same way she had in the weeks after Sarah's death. "It's not like that." "Yes, it is." She turned to look out the window. "It's because of the meetings, isn't it? Because you have to work?" The guilt in Marcus's chest felt like a physical weight. "Emma, listen to me. This isn't your fault, and it's not really about me either. Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense, that aren't fair." "Life isn't fair," Emma whispered, repeating something she'd said often in those dark months after losing her mother. "I know." They drove home in silence, broken only by the sound of light rain beginning to fall against the windshield. Their apartment was in a converted house in East Portland, nothing fancy but clean and filled with Emma's artwork and the books they collected from library sales. As Emma went to her room to start homework, Marcus stood in their small kitchen, staring at the calendar on the refrigerator, covered with Emma's careful handwriting marking her gifted program activities. His phone rang, the supervisor again. Marcus answered this time. "Thompson, I need you tonight. Johnson called in sick, and we've got to finish the Henderson project by Friday." Marcus closed his eyes. "I can't tonight, Rick. I've got Emma." "Look, man, I get it. Single dad, tough situation. But if you want to keep this job, I need you reliable. Can you get a sitter?" The neighbor who usually watched Emma was visiting her daughter in Seattle for the week. The backup sitter charged $15 an hour he didn't have. "I'll figure something out," Marcus heard himself say. After he hung up, Marcus called his younger brother, Terrell, who lived across town. It went to voicemail. He tried his cousin Monica. Same result. At 7 p.m., he finally gave in and called the expensive sitter, watching his already tight budget disintegrate further. At midnight, Marcus returned home exhausted, paid the sitter money he'd meant for groceries, and checked on Emma. She was asleep with a book about Marie Curie still open on her chest. He carefully closed it and pulled her blanket up, noticing the dried tears on her cheeks. In his own room, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, still in his work clothes, staring at the framed photo on his nightstand. Sarah smiled back at him, her arm around a 6-year-old Emma at the beach, both of them laughing. He'd promised her in those final moments at the hospital that he'd take care of their daughter, give her every opportunity, never let her down. "I'm trying, Sarah," he whispered to the photograph. "I'm trying so damn hard." But as he lay down that night staring at the ceiling while exhaustion pulled at him, Marcus couldn't shake Director Sinclair's words. "She doesn't belong here." The phrase echoed in his mind, stoking an anger that had been building since he'd sat in that office. His daughter belonged anywhere her intelligence and hard work could take her, and he'd be damned if he'd let anyone tell her otherwise. The question was, what could he possibly do about it? Marcus woke at 5:30 a.m. to his alarm, his body protesting the lack of sleep. The rain from the night before had cleared, leaving Portland's streets slick and gleaming under the early morning streetlights. He moved through his routine on autopilot, shower, coffee, checking that Emma's lunch was packed. When he woke her at 6:15, she was quiet, the enthusiasm from yesterday completely gone. "Morning, sweetheart," he said gently, sitting on the edge of her bed. "How about pancakes before school?" Emma shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "Not hungry." "Emma," Marcus sighed, running his hand over his face. "I know you're upset about the program, but you can't let this stop you from being you. You're still the same brilliant girl you were yesterday." "Am I?" She finally looked at him, and the doubt in her 8-year-old eyes broke his heart. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong there. Kayla's mum doesn't work 2 jobs. Tyler's dad comes to every single meeting in a suit. Maybe I'm not good enough." "Stop!" Marcus's voice came out sharper than he intended, and he softened it immediately. "Emma Marie Thompson, you listen to me. You are more than good enough. You're extraordinary. This isn't about you or how smart you are. This is about—" He struggled to find the right words. "This is about adults who can't see past their own narrow view of what a family should look like." "Then why can't you fix it?" The question was plaintive, childish, and completely fair. "I'm going to try," Marcus promised, though he had no idea how. "Get dressed. We'll grab breakfast on the way to school." At the construction site, Marcus worked with unusual intensity, channeling his frustration into physical labor. His crew boss, Tommy Chen, noticed around mid-morning. "You trying to demolish the whole building by yourself, Thompson?" Tommy asked, handing him a water bottle. "Take a break before you hurt yourself." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool October air. "Just focus, that's all." "Focused looks different than angry." Tommy leaned against a support beam, studying him. "What's going on?" Tommy had been kind to Marcus over the past year, cutting him slack when he needed to leave early for Emma, never complaining when Marcus was exhausted from his night shift at the warehouse. Marcus found himself explaining the situation with the gifted program, the words coming out in a frustrated rush. "That's bullshit," Tommy said flatly when he finished. "My wife Diane runs enrichment programs for the district, different schools than yours, but same bureaucracy. These programs, they say they're about merit, but there's always bias. Kids from the right neighborhoods, right family situations." "So what do I do?" Marcus asked. "I can't quit my jobs. I can barely make rent as it is." Tommy was quiet for a moment, thinking. "There's a school board meeting next week, public comment period. You could speak. What good would that do? They'll just see another struggling parent complaining." "Maybe. Or maybe you change one person's mind. Maybe that one person knows someone else. Diane always says change in these systems happens slowly, one voice at a time." Tommy clapped him on the shoulder. "Think about it." That evening, after picking up Emma from school and sitting through another silent dinner, Marcus pulled up the school district website on his old laptop. The school board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. at the district administration building. Public comments were limited to 3 minutes per speaker on a first-come, first-served basis. 3 minutes to explain his daughter's worth, their struggle, the injustice of Director Sinclair's decision. It seemed impossible, but it was something. Marcus added his name to the sign-up list before he could talk himself out of it. The next few days passed in a blur of work and worry. Emma remained withdrawn, going through the motions of her schoolwork, but without her usual spark. On Wednesday, she came home with a permission slip for the OMSI field trip, the one she'd been so excited about just days earlier. "I'm not going," she announced, tossing it on the kitchen counter. "Why not? You love science museums." "What's the point?" Emma's voice cracked. "I'm not going to be in the program anyway. Mrs. Chen already knows." She looked at me different today, like she felt sorry for me. Marcus felt something harden in his chest. "Give me that permission slip." "Dad! Emma, I'm signing it. You're going on that field trip, and you're going to enjoy yourself. You're still in that program until the semester ends, and you're going to make the most of every single day, understand?" Emma stared at him, surprised by the steel in his voice. Slowly, she nodded. Thursday evening arrived too quickly. Marcus arranged for Emma to stay with Tommy's wife, Diane, who had insisted on helping after her husband told her about the situation. Marcus put on his only good shirt, a button-down he wore to church, and his newest jeans. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. He looked nervous, out of place, exactly how he'd felt in Director Sinclair's presence. The district administration building was in West Portland, a modern structure of glass and steel that seemed designed to intimidate. Marcus arrived 45 minutes early, his stomach churning with anxiety. The meeting room was already filling with board members, district administrators, and other parents with concerns or comments. Marcus signed in with the clerk and received his number. He'd be the 7th speaker. He found a seat in the back, trying to calm his racing heart by reviewing the notes he'd scribbled during his lunch breaks. The words seemed inadequate, too emotional, not professional enough. The meeting began promptly at 7 p.m. with procedural matters, budget approvals, curriculum updates, facility maintenance reports. Marcus half listened, his attention caught by the board members themselves. 7 people, 4 women, 3 men, mostly white, mostly older, all looking well-rested and well-dressed. Did any of them understand what it was like to choose between paying the electric bill or buying new school shoes? When the public comment period finally arrived, Marcus listened to the other speakers. A parent complaining about lunch prices. A teacher advocating for better mental health resources. A taxpayer opposing a proposed levy. Each speaker approached the microphone with varying degrees of confidence, some reading prepared statements, others speaking off the cuff. Then came Marcus's turn. "Number 7, Marcus Thompson," the clerk called. Marcus stood, his legs feeling uncertain beneath him. He made his way to the microphone, aware of dozens of eyes on him. Under the bright lights, he could see the board members clearly now, and there, in the row of administrators along the side wall, sat Director Margaret Sinclair, her expression already dismissive. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw recognition flash across her face, followed immediately by what looked like irritation. She leaned toward the woman next to her and whispered something, and Marcus felt his carefully prepared words evaporate from his mind. "Mr. Thompson," the board president prompted, "you have 3 minutes." Marcus cleared his throat, gripping the sides of the podium. "My name is Marcus Thompson. My daughter Emma is in the gifted program at Riverside Elementary, or she was until Director Sinclair decided she doesn't belong there anymore." Director Sinclair's head snapped up, her expression hardening. "I'm not here to attack anyone," Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength, "but I need you to understand what you're doing when you remove a child from a program like this. Emma lost her mother 14 months ago. Losing her place in the gifted program feels like losing something else precious, like she's not good enough because her family doesn't look a certain way." He looked directly at Director Sinclair. "I work 2 jobs, yes. I miss meetings sometimes, yes. But I read with my daughter every night. We go to the library every Saturday. She knows she can do anything if she works hard enough. Or at least, she used to believe that." The board president shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Thompson, if you have a specific grievance about a placement decision, there's a formal appeal process." "I tried that," Marcus interrupted, then caught himself. "Sorry, but I did." And I was told Emma doesn't belong because her family situation doesn't meet certain standards. But those aren't written standards, are they? They're just judgment calls. Director Sinclair stood abruptly. Mr. President, if I may respond. Actually, Director Sinclair, the public comment period doesn't allow for debate. The President began, but she was already speaking. This is a mischaracterization of our conversation, Mr. Thompson. The gifted program has clear requirements for parental involvement that you failed to meet. This isn't personal. It feels pretty personal when you tell my 8-year-old daughter she doesn't belong. Marcus shot back, his composure cracking. The room erupted in murmurs. The board president gavelled for order. Marcus realized he was shaking, his 3 minutes almost certainly up, his chance to make a calm, rational argument completely blown. Mr. Thompson, your time is up, the president said, not unkindly, but we'll make note of your concerns. Director Sinclair, please stay after the meeting so we can discuss this matter further. Marcus nodded stiffly and turned to leave the podium. His face burned with embarrassment and frustration. He'd accomplished nothing except making himself look emotional and unstable. As he walked back toward his seat, he noticed a side door near the back of the room. Instead of sitting through the rest of the meeting in humiliation, he veered toward it, needing air, space, escape. He pushed through the door without thinking, and found himself not in a hallway, but in another meeting room. The room Marcus stumbled into was smaller than the main chamber, dimly lit, with a large conference table surrounded by chairs. Several people sat around the table, papers and folders spread before them, all turning to stare at him with expressions ranging from surprise to alarm. "Sorry, wrong door," Marcus began, already backing up. Then his eyes adjusted to the lighting, and he recognized one of the faces at the table, Director Margaret Sinclair. But this couldn't be right. She'd been in the main chamber just moments ago. Marcus's confusion must have shown on his face, because Sinclair stood quickly, her professional mask slipping to reveal something closer to panic. "Mr. Thompson, this is a private meeting. You need to leave immediately." But Marcus's attention had caught on the document spread across the table. Even from where he stood, he could see what looked like student files, photographs, names highlighted in different colors. And there, in one of the open folders, he saw a familiar face staring back at him from a photo. Emma. His feet moved before his brain caught up, carrying him further into the room. "What is this? Why do you have my daughter's file here?" A heavy-set man in an expensive suit, Marcus recognized him as Dr. Robert Chase, the superintendent, stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and the table. "Mr. Thompson, you're trespassing in a closed executive session. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now, or I'll call security." "Executive session about what?" Marcus demanded, but his eyes were still scanning the visible documents. He caught fragments, budget reports, demographic breakdowns, phrases like program optimization and resource allocation. Another woman at the table, younger black, wearing a blazer with a visitor badge, caught his attention because she hadn't moved to hide the documents. Instead, she was watching Marcus with an unreadable expression, one hand resting on an open folder. "It's about cutting the gifted program," she said quietly. "Excuse me?" Dr. Chase rounded on her. "Ms. Williams, you're here as an observer from the State Education Department, and as an observer, I'm observing that a parent just walked in on a meeting where you're deciding which students to remove from gifted services to reduce costs." Ms. Williams met Marcus's eyes. "Isn't that correct, Superintendent?" The room fell silent. Director Sinclair had gone pale, one hand pressed to the table as if for support. Marcus felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. "You're cutting the program? That's what this is really about. It's not about Emma not belonging. You're just getting rid of students to save money." "It's more complicated than that," Dr. Chase said, attempting to regain control. "The district is facing significant budget pressures. We have to make difficult decisions about resource allocation across all programs. So you lie to parents. Marcus's voice rose. You tell them their kids don't meet standards, that they don't belong, when really you're just cutting costs. We're restructuring the program to focus on students with the greatest need and the strongest support systems. Director Sinclair found her voice, but it lacked its usual confidence. Students like Emma, while certainly bright, have other factors that make intensive gifted services less critical. Other factors. Marcus took a step toward the table, and Dr. Chase moved to block him again. You mean black kids? Poor kids? Kids with single parents? That's an unfair characterization, Sinclair protested, but Marcus saw the truth in how her eyes wouldn't meet his. In the color-coded charts on the table, he could now see more clearly. Yellow highlights, green highlights, red highlights, a spectrum that even from here he could see corresponded to a pattern. Ms. Williams stood, gathering the folders in front of her. Mr. Thompson, I suggest you file a formal complaint with the State Education Department. As of tomorrow morning, this meeting and these decisions will be under investigation. You can't do that, Dr. Chase sputtered. These are internal district matters, not when they involve civil rights violations. Ms. Williams's voice was calm but hard as steel, and not when they're made in executive session that's supposed to be about personnel matters, not program cuts affecting students. You've violated Oregon public meeting law and possibly federal education discrimination laws. Now wait just a minute, Sinclair started, but Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at Emma's file on the table, at the red highlight over her name, at the notes in the margin that he could just barely read. Father unreliable, limited resources, transition to standard track. All the pieces clicked into place. The meeting in Principal Henderson's office hadn't been about Emma's fit for the program. It had been a predetermined decision based on spreadsheets and budget cuts disguised as standards and requirements. How many other families had received the same news? How many other children had been told they didn't belong when the truth was simply that the district didn't want to pay for their education? I want copies of everything, Marcus said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. Every document, every decision, every email about this. Absolutely not, Dr. Chase said. Those are confidential. They're public records, Ms. Williams interrupted. And Mr. Thompson has every right to request them. I suggest you start preparing them now, Superintendent, because once the state investigation begins, we'll be requesting them anyway. Director Sinclair dropped back into her chair, her face a mask of resignation. She looked smaller somehow. The authority that had seemed so absolute in Henderson's office now revealed as nothing more than the power to hurt people from behind a desk. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Williams held out a business card. Please contact me tomorrow. I'll need your statement for the investigation. Marcus took the card with numb fingers. What happens now? Now? You go home to your daughter. Ms. Williams gave him a small, tight smile. And you tell her that sometimes the doors we're not supposed to open are exactly the ones we need to go through. Marcus left the room in a daze, barely aware of navigating back through the hallways, past the main chamber where the board meeting was still ongoing, out into the cold October night. He sat in his truck in the parking lot for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed, Diane Chen checking in about Emma. Marcus responded that he was on his way, then sat staring at Ms. Williams's business card. Jennifer Williams, Senior Investigator, Oregon Department of Education, Civil Rights Division. He'd walked into that room by accident, looking for an escape from his own humiliation. Instead, he'd found something far more significant, proof that his daughter's exclusion wasn't about her at all. It was about money and prejudice hidden behind the language of standards and appropriateness. The question now was, what would he do with this information? Marcus started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot, his mind already racing ahead. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time since sitting in Henderson's office, Marcus felt something other than helplessness. He felt like he had a fighting chance. The investigation moved faster than Marcus had dared to hope. Ms. Williams hadn't been exaggerating about the seriousness of what he'd uncovered. Within 48 hours, the story broke in the local news. Not because Marcus went to the media, but because Ms. Williams' investigation required formal notice to the school board, and someone on the board apparently felt the public had a right to know. District Gifted Program under investigation for discriminatory practices, the headline read on Friday morning. Marcus stared at it on his phone during his break at the construction site, still not quite believing this was real. Tommy appeared at his elbow, reading over his shoulder. "Holy shit, Thompson, you did it." "I didn't do anything," Marcus protested. "I just opened the wrong door." "Nah, man, you spoke up. That takes guts." Tommy squeezed his shoulder. "Diane's been fielding calls all morning from other parents in the district. Turns out you weren't the only one." That shouldn't have surprised Marcus, but it did. He'd felt so alone in Henderson's office, so isolated in his struggle. The idea that other families had faced the same judgment, the same coded language about belonging and standards, made his anger flare fresh. By Friday afternoon, the pressure had intensified enough that Superintendent Chase issued a statement announcing the suspension of all planned changes to the gifted program, pending the completion of the state investigation. Director Sinclair was placed on administrative leave. Marcus picked up Emma from school that day to find her buzzing with energy for the first time in a week. Dad, did you see? Mrs. Chen said I'm staying in the program. She said there was a mistake in how they were doing things, and now it's being fixed." Emma bounced on her toes, waiting for him to unlock the truck. "What happened? What did you do?" Marcus helped her into the truck, still processing the speed of everything. "I told the truth, sweetheart, that's all. Sometimes that's enough." "Tyler's mom came to school at lunch," Emma continued, chattering as Marcus drove. "She was thanking Principal Henderson for reconsidering. She kept looking at Tyler like she was so relieved. Was he getting kicked out too?" "Probably," Marcus said quietly. "Probably a lot of kids were." That evening, Emma did homework at the kitchen table while Marcus prepared dinner. Spaghetti, Emma's favorite. His phone kept buzzing with messages. Tommy, checking in. His brother Terrell, apologizing for missing his calls earlier and offering to help however he could. Monica asking if he'd seen the news. And then a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Thompson, this is Jennifer Williams. I know it's after hours, but would you be willing to meet tomorrow morning? There are some things we should discuss about the investigation and your daughter's case specifically." They met at a coffee shop in Northeast Portland, a neighborhood Marcus knew well from his childhood. Ms. Williams was already there when he arrived, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking more approachable than she had in that conference room. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, as Marcus sat down with his coffee. "I wanted to update you off the record, parent to parent." "You have kids?" She smiled. "Two. Both went through gifted programs. Both dealt with teachers and administrators who had preconceptions about what gifted students should look like. I know this fight, Mr. Thompson. I've lived it." "So, what happens now?" Ms. Williams pulled out a folder. Not the thick investigation files, but something thinner. "Now, we document everything. The investigation will take months, maybe longer. But I wanted you to know that what you uncovered isn't just budget cuts. We found email chains, meeting minutes, documentation showing a systematic pattern of removing students from gifted services based on socioeconomic factors and race." Marcus felt sick. "How many kids?" "Across the district, 47 over the past 3 years, and Riverside wasn't the only school." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Here's the thing, though. This is going to get messy. The district will lawyer up. Director Sinclair will claim her decisions were legitimate educational judgments. Some parents won't want to be involved in the investigation because they're worried about retaliation." "Are you trying to scare me off?" "No, I'm trying to prepare you." Ms. Williams met his eyes. "Because I need to know. Are you willing to be a witness, to testify if this goes to a hearing, to let Emma's name and case be part of this publicly?" Marcus thought about Emma, about her tears when she thought she wasn't good enough, about the way she'd lit up yesterday when she learned she was staying in the program. He thought about the other 46 students whose names he didn't know, but whose stories probably echoed his own. Now, what does that mean for Emma? Being public about this? Honestly, it might be hard. Some people will support you. Others will say you're making trouble, that you're being too sensitive about race or class. Kids might tease her. It's not fair, but that's the reality. And if I say no, the investigation continues. We still have the documents, the meeting minutes. But your voice, Emma's story, that makes it real in a way statistics never can. That's what changes hearts and minds. Marcus ran his hand over his face, exhausted. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take the weekend. Call me Monday." That evening, Marcus did something he'd been avoiding. He talked to Emma about everything. Not just the surface details she'd picked up from school gossip, but the whole truth. The budget cuts disguised as standards, the color-coded charts, the other families affected. Emma listened with the sober attention she'd developed since her mother's death, that unsettling maturity that came from learning too young that the world could be arbitrary and cruel. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What did Mum always say? About standing up?" Marcus smiled sadly. Sarah had been a union organizer, fierce and fearless in fighting for workers' rights. She said if you see something wrong and you don't speak up, you become part of the problem. "Then we should speak up," Emma said simply, "right? For the other kids too?" "Baby, it might be hard. Some people might say mean things." Emma shrugged with the resilient pragmatism of 8-year-olds. "People already say mean things sometimes. About me not having a mom, about our truck being old, about us living in an apartment instead of a house. At least this time it would be for something important." Looking at his daughter, his brilliant, brave, impossibly grown-up daughter, Marcus felt something shift inside him. He'd been so focused on protecting her from hardship that he'd almost missed the chance to teach her something more important. How to fight back against injustice, how to use her voice, how to stand up even when it was scary. "You're a lot like your mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Good," Emma said firmly. She was awesome. Monday morning, Marcus called Jennifer Williams. "We're in. Whatever you need, we'll do it." The investigation took 6 months. During that time, Marcus testified at 2 hearings, was interviewed by reporters from the Oregonian and several local TV stations, and attended more meetings than he could count. Director Sinclair resigned rather than face potential disciplinary action. Superintendent Chase received a formal reprimand. More importantly, the district implemented new policies around gifted program admissions and retention, including explicit anti-discrimination guidelines and regular audits. The 47 students who'd been removed were offered reinstatement. 31 families accepted. There were hard moments. Emma dealt with some teasing from classmates whose parents resented the controversy. Marcus lost his second job when his employer got tired of him missing shifts for hearings and meetings, though he found another one within 2 weeks, and this time with better hours.